Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest edition of Daily Gooner Pod here on StreamYard, on Apple, and other streaming platforms. Usual suspects are here with you again. Joining you from the United States, I'm Raphael. And then my three London-based cohorts directly beneath me is Jake. Welcome back, Jake. Jacob.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well, going well. Again, top of the league. Remaining to his left on your screen, MJ. Welcome back, MJ.
Hello, how's it going?
And completing the cycle, our stalwart, one of the founders of this pod is Sam. Welcome back, Sam.
You're muted.
Might be his connection to his.
We may have the dreaded technical difficulties, but we're going to get Sam here in just a moment.
Give us a wave.
All right, well, he's here with us. Oh, here he comes.
No.
All right, well, let's carry on. We'll get Sam in momentarily here, but again, it's a week, two matches away from the Emirates, two matches, one up in the Arctic Circle midweek in Europa League, and then one on the weekend going to Leeds. Two difficult matches, but in the end, 6 points, 3 points from each. Arsenal only scored single goal in each. It caused a little consternation among some of the followers. MJ, let's start with you on that. Some people just really don't trust this start or ready to push the panic button on something like this. I'm a little puzzled by that.
By the fact that we've stopped scoring, that kind of thing?
Or we had trouble scoring last week. I've seen cries of, oh no, Arsenal have been found out. Oh no, this foretells trouble going forward. I don't know about that. I'm not convinced by that.
No, I don't think there's anything to worry about at all. There's context to both games. There's no real sort of phase or period of sequence of games where we're struggling to create chances or anything like that. Going away to Bodo Glimt on a 4G pitch, players from rewatching back and just seeing comments and things about that, it looked like the players were holding themselves back a bit from really giving it the full movement, I guess, to avoid risk of injury. And in the second half, it looked like we were conceding a lot of chances, but I guess going there, just getting the 3 points and just forgetting about the game is the only thing we care about at this point, because we won't really remember the games when we go into the knockout stages. We'll just remember that we got the 3 points from those places. But there's nothing to worry about. Both games are isolated in terms of the performances. We'll get on to the Leeds game in a minute, but nothing to worry about there, I don't think. I think we had a good period of games where we scored 3 in each. Now it's 1 each. Whoever we play next, I guess we've got PSV on Thursday, don't we? Is it Thursday now that they rescheduled it?
It's Thursday, yes.
So that'll be an interesting game because it's a very strong PSV team. And it'll be probably Cody Gakpo's audition for us if the rumours come back for him in January. But yeah, nothing to worry about from my end.
All right, let's try him again. Sam, welcome back.
All right, we good?
Hey.
Sam speaks. All right. Well, I'll let you dive in. MJ was just talking about it. I was put it in front of everybody that there is in some quarters, again, the panic button pushing quarters of the Arsenal fandom, some dismay or some concern that only 2 goals from the 2 matches last week, even though both resulted in wins.
Yeah, no, I know that people. Well, I'll say people. Some of the fair weather fans, I'll put it that way. They'll try and push this narrative to say, "Oh, the team's on the decline, etc., etc., etc." But the fact of the matter is, you can't win every game 3-0, 3-1, 4-0, 5-0. Sometimes you got to take the 1-0s, take the 2-1s, win ugly. Like, it is what it is. That's what makes a team across the season. Like, it's not always going to be plain sailing. And the fact is, if people are saying, "Oh, we're panicking right now," well, if this is a panic, give me more panic, give me chaos. Because I'm not being funny. I'd take 1-0 wins to the rest of the season for the Europa League. If we win the league, then and that's based off 1-0s, so be it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of them ones. It's much about nothing, but in my opinion.
And Jacobs, a lot of people do seem obsessed about style points, but part of this, I think, correct me, I mean, you may have seen differently, it's just familiar axes being ground here. Just that those who have the agenda are seeing opportunity to resuscitate the agenda, kind of the Arteta outs poking their heads out of the hidey holes after being quiet for a month or so. What do you see?
Yeah, people will always have an agenda, or always want to create a stir, because you know what, stir creates likes and followers and interactions and all that sort of thing. Being controversial will get you interactions, and that's all people want. At the end of the day, as Sam said, we can't play perfectly every game. We know that our squad is probably a little bit light, so you know what? They can't go gung-ho every single game and blow teams off the pitch every single game. That's just not realistic. So if they need to rock up to Bodo and play it 60, 70% to, reduce the impact of the different pitch and reduce the impact of the travel and just see a game through, then that's what they've got to do. And these players are good enough to win games like that at 60, 70%. So, no, not concerned. At the end of the day, everyone's been saying for ages, this is a busy schedule, players are going to get tired. Well, this is what happens when players get tired. And, I don't see any issue. Like, we didn't score five against Leeds, but they've beaten other big teams this season already. Their home form has been a bit patchy in terms of lots of draws, but they've been playing with a lot of intensity against everyone. So they probably weren't the team we wanted to play during a busy period because of that intensity in the middle that they showed. And you know what? Haaland didn't score against Liverpool and Martinelli and Saka did. So,
Now, you bring up a good point. I mean, this looked like, you look at the schedule like a trap game. You're coming off a long trip in Europa League. Now you got not as long, but obviously a trip to a difficult ground. As you said, fatigue. And I've been writing about other sports for a long, long time. And one of the things that, this brought up something that I've been telling readers and fans for a couple of decades is like, you have to can't take things in a vacuum. And as you both pointed out, MJ and Jacob, the mighty Man City played 2 matches on the road last week. Didn't score in either one, only got 1 point out of it, and fell 4 points behind Arsenal rather than being 1 point behind them. So, I think just kind of getting tunnel vision about your club. Well, again, everybody gets tired, and we saw it. And actually finding the win came to Arsenal's benefit. I think what I like about all of this is this club enters every match thinking we're going to win this. They play 13 matches in all competitions this year. They've scored in every one. No one's been able to shut them out yet. And I like that. So even when they're not on form, they find a way, and they go out expecting we're going to win. I haven't seen them play for a draw anywhere. I mean, it cost them at United, but Sam, I'll go to you with this. I really like that mindset.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, to be honest. I'd much rather try and get the win rather than just try and concede a draw. In some situations, that might change if we come to, say, the latter end of the season and we're in a position sometimes a point's better than no points. But right now, I think it's wins as possible and getting as many wins as possible. The United game, as we've discussed previously, I think that we made a few errors in terms of substitutions, changing the system in terms of that game. But on the face of it, I still feel really good performance for us, and I think that that's a one-off. Moving forward, the only one that I can see that might have that type of do we want to go for a point at the end? Maybe Chelsea, but given how we're playing at the moment, I think that we've got more than enough. Even if we grind out an ugly win, so be it. If we go for more and go for the goal difference, because at the end of the day, that's all gonna count at the end of the season. So yeah, I'm all for it. All for going for the wins and not conceding. And then we see some other managers give up in 72nd minute. So not my manager.
Not at all this season, and MJ that's part of the benefit, I think, of having the deeper squad. We've seen this too. Is like he doesn't say, "Oh, it's 72nd minute. Oh, we're tied." We saw them at United. They drew even, and he said, "Okay, I'm going for this." It cost him, but would you have it any other way?
No. This is exactly what I think a lot of fans would have wanted. I think there was a quote from himself a long time ago. I think he was with us during this time, and they were talking about him being a coach one day or a future manager, and his quotes were something along the lines of fully attacking, possession, dominance, like all of these noises and sounds he's been making for years when he was doing it. If he did do his badges, I guess he had to if he gets to his position. But I guess back then he already had this mindset of being on the front foot, being attacking, and I wouldn't have any other way. I know it cost us against United, but I think what he's probably doing better now is he's probably learning from his mistakes because he's still quite early in his own career. So that sort of, I guess, the triple substitution, he probably takes his time the next time around, let's say, away to Chelsea. If we're in the same scenario where we're 1-1 and we're growing into the game again, we've just equalised, maybe he doesn't make the 3 subs again. But I wouldn't have any other way. just like Sam said, that's not my manager. That's my manager.
All right, and that's a good bridge, Jacob, to the Leeds match, because this was a match where he had to empty the bench, and he did empty the bench, and he made a lot of tactical changes in the waning 15, 20 minutes trying to protect a lead. Now, he obviously wasn't going for the draw, but he was going to keep his 3 points. We've talked about this in previous matches that he seemed to kind of hold back. He has 5 substitutions this season for the first time, and he has just been loath to use all 5. And this time, I think he felt, as his squad looked a little tired. We'll talk about the nature of some of them, flopping, bringing Tomiyasu from the left back to the right, putting Tierney in, getting Ben White off. He seemed to be having a little trouble at the beginning of the second half when Leeds was really applying pressure. So I think that speaks to MJ's point, is he seems to be learning kind of on the fly and trying a little more willing to try things.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, these subs were forced by Leeds and the way the game state was going. But it does show that he's learned. Now, he's always had the Rob Holding special, but a lot of those subs wouldn't have happened for various reasons. Either he didn't want to take off a senior player, or it's his star man, his man on the pitch, or whatever. But he has shown that willingness to adapt and adapt to that game state. He realised in this game that there were a couple of aspects going wrong. And his first subs were to try and actually put us back on the front foot, bringing on players with more technical security to try and keep the ball. When that didn't work, it was right. Tierney and Rob Holding, we're going to just keep this now. But so he showed kind of 2 different types of subs in the same game. The initial was to try and change the game back in our favour, and when that didn't work was, okay, well, now we're going to adapt to the opposition, which isn't our first choice, probably shouldn't ever be our first choice, but is something he's now shown he can do.
All right, so let's talk a bit more in depth about the match. I think we were all kind of optimistic that Arsenal could put some goals past Leeds. Leeds came out, Sam, I think we were talking about this prior to the pod. I welcome the fact that here's a squad. We don't see many of these on the road or anywhere that will line up against Arsenal and say, we're not intimidated by you. We feel we can run with you. We're going to try to press you just as hard as you're going to try to press us. and we're going to try to beat you at that attacking game. It was made for nervy football, but also made for, in my eyes, very exciting football.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that we can all say on this pod today is that Leeds are a very exciting team, even under when they was with Bielsa. They've got that hard running aspect, but they've added a few players in able to make it more of a attractive style of football. With Jesse Marsh as well, he's somebody that has the experience from Leipzig, I think it was, where he's able to implement that style, and with the high press, high running, moving that ball very quickly. And there's multiple times in that game where they did tear through us, and we got very lucky at the back on certain occasions, because we could have been down to 10, maybe 9 men in that game. But yeah, I think in terms of how they lined up against us, quite similar how Brentford done it last year, first game of the season. They just come at us and said, okay, this is how we're setting up our stall. You try and adapt to us. We're not adapting to you. See what happens. But I think given the quality that we've got, and as we discussed last week, with the players, we've got an extra year under the belt, the extra experience going to these raucous stadiums. So they've got that ability now to ride it out, grind it out, and showcase their talent and be a bit more dominating in terms of the skill aspect. But I think, given how well Leeds done, especially when Bamford come on, he caused real issues for us in that second half. I think that it was a very interesting game, and one I think Arteta will analyse very, very deeply, considering the teams that we've come up haven't posed us that many issues, but Leeds caused quite a bit, and I think there'll be a bit of an inquest into how we can rectify that when we come up against that style of team.
Let's stay with that, MJ. It's certainly at the beginning of the second half when they put Bamford on. It really seemed that they were able to kind of get past our midfield, something very, very few teams have done. I was wondering if Granit Xhaka was maybe a bit dinged. He seemed a little tired, a little fatigued. Partey was doing a good job, but it still is with Odegaard. It was very difficult for Arsenal to get out of their own half, certainly for the first 15, 20 minutes of that, and came very, very close to conceding an equalizer there.
Yeah, that second half, we had a really good 45 minutes to match Leeds' intensity. But in the second half, it just looked like our physical levels had dropped. And Bamford, whether that was to replace Rodrigo because of his error to the goal, or I think it's probably more so a strategic approach, if anything, while he came on. He really did give us some troubles up there. I don't know. I think there's probably a couple of reasons why we were probably struggling in the second half. And I think it's just a recovery between the two games. And I was thinking about this last night. In my own personal experience, when I've had to sort of go away for work and you've had back-to-backs and we're talking country to country, a lot of time is spent on the travel and a lack of sleep. And I think Mikel Arteta only had one training session, I believe he said. I think he called it an activation session. So I guess in that time, you're only using it to recharge the legs as best as you can. And I think we probably felt the impact of that in the second half. And I think out of the two, from Gabriel and Saliba, I think Gabriel coped better with the physical element. I think he loves the physical games. And he really did stand out between the two centre-backs. But Bamford did give us some real troubles. And we were pretty lucky to get away with some of the chances that they created, but also the decisions that did go our way. But much better from Gabriel this game. Much, much better. I think this is the type of game that he just thrives on, isn't it?
And good for him, especially talking about the difficulties that he's had clearing the ball in the previous matches. Jacob, he just seemed a lot more settled in, and maybe that is MJ's point, that he seems to relish this style of play. But people around him just seem to kind of struggle a little bit. Saliba did. Obviously, he got the handball. just seemed it wasn't as sharp in this match. But again, they were all saved in the end by one Aaron Ramsdale, who saved one of his best matches of this season for this moment when it was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I mean, on Gabriel, he was one of the players who didn't play Thursday night, so obviously that might have had something to do with the extra energy levels and intensity. But it did bring out some of his better qualities, like making that many blocks in aerial duels one and all that is incredible. He had a really good game for 90 minutes. Now, I'm sure we'll get to the extra time and all the decision that went on there, but wasn't his finest moment despite it going our way. But for 90 minutes, he was phenomenal. He really was, and he stood out as one of our better players. I thought Gabriel was easily our best defender. Xhaka was the most composed player on the pitch. And yeah, Aaron Ramsdale, all the criticisms. Well, he can play the ball out, but he's not very good shot stopping, is he? Absolutely fantastic. Saved us with several good saves. You know, 2 particularly really high quality ones that most keepers wouldn't have made. Top keepers make those saves, but most keepers wouldn't have made those saves. And he did exactly what we needed him to do. So, yeah, those 3 players in particular stood out, like even in that second half where things were not going our way at all. So, you know, they really kind of stood up and tried to get this team going. Wasn't quite enough to impose our game plan, but it was enough to get us over the line.
I feel like, Sam, I kind of brushed past the first half, though. I want to go back to that because there was some good play then. Our Arsenal was composed. Arsenal was able to withstand the early Leeds press and actually break it pretty consistently up the middle and got a couple of counterattacks. One just missed where Jesus kind of chipped the ball over the bar at about the 15th, 18th minute or so, where he could have put Arsenal in an early lead. And then obviously the decisive counter with Odegaard feeding Saka, who had an angle, I don't know, about so big. And he didn't sky his chance. He roofed it perfectly.
No, it's muted. Oh, not connected. No.
Oh, he's not having good luck tonight.
MJ, you want to take that one?
Yes. So annoyingly for me, my stream, I had no good stream for at least 30 minutes. So I managed to catch probably the second half of the first half, but I've seen some clips back of some of the moves that we've played. I mean, we looked really prepared for that game. For the first half, we played some really good patterns. We were matching Leeds. I think in the second half, Leeds probably stepped it up and then we dropped off. So there's a bit of a double hit there. But to Saka's chance, that's a lovely finish. I read today that every goal that he scored this season so far, he's scored when we're either losing or at level. So he's creating the sort of the match-winning moments now, which is something that I've wrote on a couple of times already. He's producing more and more moments that are counting. I think the XG on that chance that he had was, I think it was close to 0 or something. He had no right to get that in. But I think Mikel was known for working with his wide players. And I think one of the things he's probably coached into Saka is if you get a half chance, blast it as hard as you can. And I think in that occasion, he showed he's got a bit of a weak foot. I don't know how many goals he scored with his right foot for us. I can't think of too many. But that's a lovely goal. It's going to be up there for goal of the month for sure. But Saka's making those chances count now, and it's really good to see that he's just going up a level as each game week passes. So that slow start that he had, that it wasn't really a slow start. It was just he was creating more chances. Now he's making goals for himself. So he wants to be part of the fun now that Martinelli and Jesus had at the start of the season. So good for him.
And that goes to something, and we'll go back to you, Sam, that we talked about last year, that was going to be the next step. We saw Saka creating chances for other people, creating chances for himself, and just curling the ball wide or just missing, hitting it over the bar. And that ruthless, we said, when the next step, he's going to start putting these in the net, and then we're going to see 10, maybe 15 goals when he's in his prime. I don't know if he's there yet. I don't think he's there yet, but he's certainly taken a giant step in that direction. Sam, you want to try that again? Or just see if you're back on form?
No.
No. All right. Well, Jacob, you take that one.
Yeah.
Because it is the next phase, Saka. I mean, that's the evolution. I think I'm a little surprised that Martinelli. I thought Saka was ahead of Martinelli, and it seemed like Martinelli took the giant step, and now Saka certainly responds, and the accumulative is all for the good.
Yeah. It's always been an interesting one, that because Saka was always the kind of get you off your feet player, and Martinelli was at first. So Martinelli started off as that, really get you off your feet player. But although he had some massive moments even in his first season, he wasn't really the end product player, despite obviously what everyone thought. He never had the big numbers. And that's kind of how now Martinelli's developed, into both. He's an exciting player, but he's getting the stats as well. Saka was always from the start an exciting player and a chance creator. And to be honest, he's probably not as exciting this season so far. But his numbers are big. He's contributed 8 goals this season between goals and assists, which is the same as Jesus. So, to be able to just step up your game, and he's not having to do it all his own and trying to be exciting and beat several players and do it all by himself now. He is exploding in certain moments, and he's doing it in a smart way that impacts the game more. So rather than obviously us just kick it to Saka and hope he can beat 3 men and get it in, he doesn't have to. We've got so many dangerous players now that Saka can pick and choose his moments to kind of explode. And that goal was prime example. He waited for the ball to come into Odegaard, and he exploded beyond the line, knowing Odegaard was going to find him. And tight angle, but he backed himself up to take the chance, and great finish. But I think it just shows that he's now being a bit smarter to pick and choose when he can be most effective, which is a really important skill to learn. Because, big game players, you've always said, they can have a game when they're not impacting across the pitch. But when the moment comes, they'll make they put a big moment in a big game. And that's what he's doing. It might have only been Leeds, but over the course of the season, that might be a big moment. Getting in behind the score and the only goal of a game and a win. It's big points, regardless of who it is.
One thing.
Go ahead, MJ. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that I think the one thing that Saka's added with his off the ball is, if you think back on the Aston Villa game where Martinelli did some really good work on the left-hand side in the first half, and he had crossed the ball and Saka had an open goal, and he unfortunately turned that wide, if you remember that chance. And he was getting memed on Twitter for missing an open goal. But one of the things he's added is getting on the end of good work or a cross or something similar. And the evidence of that is the goal against Liverpool, his first goal in the end of the first half. And there was a couple of crosses against, I can't remember who it is, but a cross came in from the left. It was a very recent game, and no one got onto the end on the right-hand side, which is Saka's area. So something that he's added very slowly is getting onto the end of things now that we're producing more from the left-hand side. So we'll probably see a couple more of that goal poaching type goals from Saka, which is something that Sterling used to do really well. Sterling used to get on the end of loads of goal, and maybe Stat had his own goal tally. But that's something that he's slowly adding in. If Martinelli's doing good work, or if it's Jesus on the left-hand side and that ball's cutting across, Saka's just got to sniff that chance at the end of it. He doesn't have to dribble past everyone. That's something that he did really well last season. Now he can add a different type of goal to his portfolio. So that's definitely the next step, and we're seeing more of that now more recently.
Like you talk about that because I've seen it from both wingers, is that their crossing ability has improved dramatically. We talked about this a couple of pods ago about how the set pieces of the corners have improved, but from open play too, you see it that they look for each other on those opposite wings, and obviously the goal against Liverpool was on the ground, that wonderful pass that Jesus dummied, but they can do it in the air as well. So they keep you thinking. Something else I noticed, Jacob, very early in the match, we talked about this last week, that Liverpool, every time Saka got the ball on the right side, there were two defenders immediately. They refused to leave him one-on-one. They said, we're not going to let you beat us. We're not going to let you beat us. And I noticed in those first 10, 15 minutes against Leeds that every time Martinelli got the ball, he loves to get it on that wing and then carry it inside. But he was bracketed by two and oftentimes by three Leeds defenders. That's a good thing, though, is to develop this. Opponents are given this mindset of like, we can't let Saka do it, but now if they're doing it to Martinelli, it means somebody's open. There's an overload, but if you beat it, the opportunities for chances are just going to multiply with these two guys.
Yeah,
they both command that fear.
Yeah, and that's one of the great threats that we kind of have now, whereas before you could pick our danger player and really gang up on him and mark him out of the game. Now, do you push over to Martinelli? Do you stay central to deal with Jesus? Do you deal with Saka? There's too many threats for them to really do it. You can kind of have two men going across, whether it's a midfielder pushing in or a defender going across, but you can't really commit any more than that. And even then, you've got to be smart about your movement, because we've got the players with a technical quality just to do a big switch across the pitch and open up the man that they've left free. So, just by having dangerous players instantly opens up more kind of avenues for us, because, well, yeah, you can't leave Trent one-on-one against Martinelli. So someone else pulls across, it leaves space for someone else. And, that might even be space for a Granit Xhaka running from deep. It's just really, it's great problems to have, and having them almost brings your own chances just because opponents are wary of how to mark them. So we've seen it before. Oh, we need to commit 3 people to De Bruyne. Well, that leaves someone else free in lots of space. So just by your opponents giving you that respect to certain players will open up other players. And short of, something drastic, that's not really going to change all season. So as long as we know how to take advantage of it, we should see results.
And this is part of the plan that MJ, we talked about who do you pick your poison, but Arteta talked about the ability to change mid-game, and we've seen this certainly with the attacking players, how they interchange, how Martinelli will go to the right, he'll go to the middle, Saka will flip with him. That just adds another layer to all of this. It's hard enough to say, okay, we've got to stop Martinelli on his wing, or we're going to stop Saka on his wing, but now where are they? We can't count on them being in their slots, so to speak.
Yeah, it reminds me of the sort of the days of when Perez used to come into the middle and Henry would go to the left. Then what you're doing is you're always adding question marks to the back line of the opposition. Like if you mark this player, who goes out to that player? So the variety of the rotations of where Jesus goes. A couple of times I've noticed when the game is sort of in a dead space where not a lot is happening, Gabriel Jesus is found to go more to the left, and Ramsdale has found him a couple of times. The best example is in the Liverpool game, where between 5 minutes to 40 minutes, where Liverpool had all of the ball, and Ramsdale does one long switch to Jesus on the left, and that wakes the crowd up. He does a little turn on Trent. So the rotation and the fluidity, really, isn't it, between the 3 players? The more questions you ask of the opposition, the more chances you're going to create a gap or an avenue or a channel. And it's a really nice variety. We can create some really different attacks. We're not going to be that one-trick pony of Odegaard and Saka on the right. Now it's Martinelli down the middle and then Jesus on the left, and then Xhaka's gone up. the more you can make them question where are we going to be, the more fun and interesting it is from our perspective. So we just enjoy it as long as we can.
All right. We're going to talk about the schedule running into the break, but we just got a question from Kieran McGlynn. So let's put it out there. I'll start with you, Jacob. What signings do you reckon we get in January? I mean, I talked about this a little bit last week that and we talked about this, we were talking about this in the pre-pod that it looks, and we'll get to this in a moment, looking at the 4 matches in the Prem that are left before the World Cup break, odds are very, very good that Arsenal can keep the lead, whether it's 4 points right now, whatever it may be, but be top of the table going into the World Cup break. They're going to come out of it just before Boxing Day, just before that glut of games. It gives the organization time to target players. And I have to say, I'm of the firm belief that if they're top of the league going into that and getting that long break and coming back, there's still going to be 24 matches, but this is a different opportunity, and we saw it. We saw it last January, where the club was in a position for the top 4, and then they didn't get that big signing. How disappointed everybody is, and we said, at the end when they finished in 5th, was that a problem? I know just watching the behavior of the other 2 clubs that have won championships for KSC and other leagues and American leagues here in the NFL and the NHL, that they were very, very aggressive when their teams were in a position to seize the title. And I just have to believe, I'm 100% of the belief. I'll just start with that, and I'll give it to you, Jacob, that if we're top of the league, this time will be different. They almost they feel it's like a duty. I don't know if any of us expected to be top of the league, but if you're top of the league, this time there's just no excuse to not take advantage of that.
Agreed. However, what market opportunities are they going to be? That's my concern. I fully believe that Arteta, Edu, KSE are fully 100% ready to make a deal when it needs to be made, whether that's January or summer. And I just feel that there are more deals to be made in summer, whether that's availability or the right price and the right deal. Now, I will caveat that with, I think the World Cup is going to make an interesting kind of thing. There are 100% players who didn't make moves in fear of not playing this summer because they wanted to keep playing and keep fresh for the World Cup. And I'm sure there are agreements behind closed doors that if that player stays until the World Cup, they'll look to move on after. Now, obviously, a good World Cup performance might add a few million to their price tag, which is good for the club, selling club anyway. So I don't know. I think we will get that Danilo, however it's pronounced, from Brazil. I think he will come in, but obviously he's not the star player that people want. He's not going to be ready this season. Now, if there is an opportunity, I think the club will do it. I'm just a lot more skeptical that there is an opportunity there in January. But again, I caveat that with, I think this is going to be a different January because of the World Cup. So hopefully I'll eat my words, but that's where I stand right now.
MJ, I'm gonna take that to you, but I just pulled up the Serie A outstandings because there were a couple of players on that squad, on the Juve squad, that Arsenal targeted. Vlahovic last January, and then the midfielder whose name escapes me at the moment, Locatelli, in the summer, right? They're sitting 8th. And I think that the opportunity that Jacob was talking about might present itself in that way. And I'm going to single them out. They're one team, maybe other teams like this, who expected to do well, who are off to bad starts. And that might create an opportunity because, again, Juve might have only 4 or 5 matches before they go into their window, and they're stuck in 8th, and they've got to make a move to fill something that they, to make a move that they didn't anticipate they'd have to make. So I think that might create that short season, that compressed opening of the season might create opportunities.
It's things like that. It's the availability of players that aren't having a great time. I think Vlahovic, I think we continue his punishment. He can sit on the bench at Juve. Not necessarily sure if, on paper, if you're looking at Locatelli and Vlahovic in isolation and they came in January, that could have a positive impact. I'm not entirely sure on their play styles and where they would sort of come in. Vlahovic wouldn't start for us, not in the system, and he's a bit of a big body type guy, yeah. And his physical profile, I don't know how he would fit in, but Locatelli is a little bit more interesting. Now, would he be coming in as cover for Granit, or does he play deep in parties? Or I haven't watched too much of him, but the name Locatelli is coming up a lot more recently, especially in the last couple of days. His name is crept up. But it'll be the availability, as Jake says, like those guys and possibly the Danilo. Maybe we've done a verbal agreement in the summer to bring him in January, but he'll come in as cover, but he may not necessarily be ready. But I guess there's two things. It'll be down to availability of the players that we need, but also if the excitement of the title race grows, January will probably define which way that goes. The squad that we have at the moment is not ready to go all the way, but I don't think we'll drop out the top four, not like last season. I think we're good enough to finish in the top four for sure. But the title race, we'll come back in December and have this chat again to see where we are and what January will do for us. But it will come down to availability, and I'm very sure that we do want to do a deal if something comes up. Let's see what the rumors say.
Well, I'm going to go back to you, though, because you made an interesting point. You think the squad as it is right now isn't ready. Okay. How close are they? How many players do they need to get you over that line where you say, okay, I feel they've got a real shot at it now, not just in the table, but in the dressing room, in depth, in numbers, in talent?
Oh, man, I think if I'm going to shout a number, I'm going to say 3.
It's always 3.
Where?
Yeah, 3. If we're going to go 3, we're going to go a Partey cover. We'll go cover for Saka because maybe Sambi's not quite there yet. But if we're trying to push the team over the line, probably bring in like a Locatelli or someone. Maybe our favourite Tielemans. Maybe he comes in January to push us over the line. Probably not. I think that boat has sailed. But you never know because now he's going to cost absolutely nothing. So you never know what could happen with Tielemans. But I don't know, I think many of us probably still want him. But I'm probably going to say 3. You're looking at Partey cover, Xhaka cover, and definitely a wide forward. Because if one of Martinelli and Saka get injured, I know Emil Smith-Rowe's coming back, and we've got Marquinhos and maybe Reece Nelson. But all of those guys are going to be either really unfit, not ready to go. I'm going to say 3 to really push us over the line. But if we're going off, let's say the current 11 that we have with Zinchenko in the left back role, if those guys were to carry on till the 30th game of the league season, it's a very strong 11 as it is. And we had a pretty good 11 last season, but those 3 injuries really wrecked us in Partey and the fullbacks. But if those 3 stayed fit, we get top 4. But let's see when we come back in January if we even can get 1 in or 2 in, but 3 is my number to push us over the line.
Jacob, same question to you.
Well, he's basically stolen my answer. I was good.
Okay, well then, let me put it to you. Then you can take that, drop some names in, even if it's just a wish list. Okay, spice it up a little bit.
Ooh, okay, yeah. So yeah, I was going to say 0 starters and 3 rotational players, and he's identified the 3 positions. So Partey cover or Partey rotation. That's a tough one. I keep struggling to identify a great target. Obviously, there's a lot of Sangare likers. I do like him. He's not quite the same, but to be honest, I don't think we're going to get someone who's the same who is available.
Sam has chimed in with 3 names from the ether. Danilo, Sangare, and Ferran Torres as his nominees. Sam's not sure. Those are all good, intriguing targets. All right.
Yeah, for me, Danilo isn't ready. I like the look of him, but he's not ready. So for me, that wouldn't push us any further forward right now. So I do agree with Sangari. Ferran, yeah. To be fair, Sam talked to me about him at the last game. I agreed then. I've kind of forgotten about him, but I do agree now. But I do think we need a quality player who can play across the forward line. You know, obviously we put interest in Rafinha before the Barcelona deal, but I think we need that caliber of forward, and Ferran fits the bill. In terms of Xhaka cover, again, that's a really tough one right now. The way he's playing, I did have someone on my mind the other day, and I cannot think for me. But yeah, so I'm going to agree with Sam on Sangari and Ferran, but Danilo for me doesn't push us forward right now. He's a player for the future and one that I hope we get in, but he doesn't immediately give us a lift.
Who's your winger cover? And then we'll bring it. MJ's just chomping at the bit to throw a name out there, but I want to let you to finish, Jacob, because you talked about the midfield players. Who would you look for as a wide option, as a wide rotation option for either Saka or Martinelli?
You know what? It's not quite at the level, but I think Leeds actually have another winger who can reach those kind of levels, and it's Aronson. He's not, at that Rafinha level yet, but I really like the look of his play, and he's not a winger who just stretches spaces. He's good with his feet and in tight areas. So I actually think he can make a big impact in a bigger team and with a bit of time to grow. So I'm going to go for him.
Yeah, I think, the American talent that they've got at the moment, they're really, really strong talents. And I think Jesse Marsh has probably got an arm around them. So it would be difficult to lure them away. Even Tyler Adams. Is it Tyler Adams or Tyreek Adams? One of the two names.
Tyler Adams.
Tyler. Yeah. Even he had a really good second half against us from that deep position. He'd be a really good Prem-proven cover if he was to come in. Another name that we were just chatting away there was Zubimendi. That's been coming up on my timelines. Zubimendi from Sociedad. Young, Spanish. Mikel Arteta's type of player, possibly. It fits that model of players that we've been looking and recruiting in. But yeah, there's all the names that we've already discussed. They're all players that would definitely solidify a top 2.5 finish, possibly. Sangari would be a really good one, but there's some good names already there. If any two of those came in, that would be enough to give us a really strong finish in the league.
All right. 4 matches. Let's wind it down. Let's bring it back to this week. 4 matches, 2 this week. Again, 2 important ones. Let's talk a little bit about the Europa League game. They're going to play Eindhoven. I'm not sure if it's home or away, but this is back to back with them because one of the matches was postponed after the Queen's passing and all that glut in the matches that were deferred. Important. Arsenal are 1 match behind their competitors in the Europa League. They're top of their group, but they really need to if they can find 4 points from this couplet of games, put themselves in a really good position with respect to that competition. They avoid teams that are dropping down and some really good clubs that are dropping down, and they actually give themselves a couple of matches where they can rest and rotate younger players in. Jacob, why don't you start with that one? What do you look for this week? Again, Arteta's been putting really strong squads out, trying to win the group. That was clearly his intent on Thursday. I look for more of the same.
Yeah, we are definitely making sure we win this group. He's gone for kind of 2 different approaches. I do think part of last Thursday was he knew that pitch was going to kind of be uncertain to certain players, so he went with the players who, even if they drop 20%, can still get the job done. So I think there's an element of that. Obviously, PSV is the biggest competition in this group. like without being disrespectful to the other two, this is the game that could give us some tests. The likes of Gakpo and other players in that team who are doing well. So I do expect us to stick with a kind of stronger lineup again. I'm sure it'll still be slightly changed from last week. So where, for instance, where last week Saliba played, maybe this week Gabriel plays. But I do expect it to be a blend of first team and kind of rotation rather than just the full rotated side that we saw in our first game in the group stage. Because they are second in the group. Beat them, we put a big gap between us and a big step towards top in the group. And as we discussed off there, we need to win the group, because if you come second, I'm not sure it was introduced this year or last year when we weren't in it, but you have to play a team dropping down from the Champions League as an extra knockout game. So regardless of them being good opponents coming down, you just don't want those extra games in your schedule, particularly this year. So it is just very important to top the group.
MJ, you see any difference? Kind of half rotation, 3/4 rotation. What are you looking for Thursday?
I think personally, we go as strong as we possibly can with a mixture. I guess we went fairly strong against Bodo Glimt, and I think Mikel Arteta saw an emphasis in trying to win this game so we don't make it difficult for ourselves later on. So we were probably getting some clues and some signs there to go strong. But for this week, I'd probably go as strong as we can. Because like we say, if PSV win, I'm not entirely sure if they take over us or go level. I can't remember how close they are to us in the group. But if we can get as close to first place as we can, go strong, and we'll have more than enough to beat them as well this Thursday as well. If the right mentality and the right approach, and we get the 3 points, then we can relax and prepare for the league game. If we finish second, the teams that are currently in the third places of Champions League, you're looking at Ajax, you're looking at Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, even Sporting Lisbon to a degree, but Milan. But there's enough names in there to give us a pretty difficult extra 2 games as well. So go strong Thursday, keep the focus on, and then let's manage the fitness as well. Let's hope for no injuries. But it's been interesting in the last couple where Jesus, Saka, Partey, and Odegaard, they've all come on in the last 10 or 15 minutes to maybe kill the game off in the Europa League games. So they have been taken as part of the squad. So it's a fairly strong squad as it is, but they start from the bench. So maybe we'll see a pretty strong 8 players on Thursday. But let's go strong and let's wrap up the group stages as fast as we can.
All right, moving to the weekend. A team that's struggling this year, Southampton, way down on the table, flirting, hanging around the relegation zone. I think they're in the relegation zone at the moment. But Jacob, St. Mary's has not been an easy place for Arsenal to travel for a long time. It seems like you kind of circle it and you say, I just can't assume this one. It doesn't matter if they're struggling or we're doing well. That always seems to be a real taffy pull of a match.
Yeah, this isn't a ground that we have had a lot of success on over the last few years. And we're going there in a time where we got a lot of games and might have slightly tired legs. However, I believe Southampton have just picked up in the last game or two 3 really big, important player injuries. I know that Bella Ketchup, I've forgotten the name of the other 2, but 2 players who have stood out in the games that I've watched them. So they are going in with injuries and players missing. So hopefully, between the fact that we are now a better team, they are struggling and missing players, that's going to be enough. Now, I will point to what's quite interesting. Where we lost the battle against Leeds, as we all know, is in midfield. Now, Leeds do top the table in terms of squad defensive actions for pressures in the middle third. 72.8% of their pressures come in the middle third. Second on that list for pressures in the middle third is Southampton. So they're not as intense. They're 63.4%. So, 9% or so less pressure in the middle third, and they tend to press more in the defensive third. But it is going to have similar kind of challenges for us to overcome, because where we lost the battle was the intensity and pressures in midfield. So we're going to have that to a certain level again. So what I'm really interested in seeing is if Arteta kind of goes, all right, we're against Leeds, this wasn't working, so we're going to just do this slightly differently to bypass those middle pressures. So that's what I'm kind of most looking forward to seeing. See, even if he actually comes up with a tactical kind of change, so that teams don't just decide that that's where they've got to press us and cause us issues for the rest of the season. Let's see where he can adapt. I do think we have the quality to just go there and roll them over. Tired legs, I'll say it's probably going to be a tighter game than that, but this shouldn't haunt us the way it's done in previous years.
MJ, you falling back on history or going on this year's form? They seem to predict two very different outcomes.
Yeah, and there's probably a reason for that. I tend to go to a lot of Southampton Arsenal games, so I've never seen us win at their ground, but I'm not going this year. So we should probably,
Thank you very much.
If we win, we know why. But it's each time that I went to last season's one as well, where we lost 1-0, and that's a performance from both sides that I couldn't explain, because the game that we had there last season, Southampton did very little against us, but we did very little to offer to go against them. I think it was one of Eddie's first starts for us as well. But we've got to take this game in isolation, and we're a better squad. There's a better vibe, better mentality. Mikel's in a good place himself. And injuries-wise, we're looking all right. So for now, from on paper, it looks like it will probably swing our way. A good friend of mine who does go to the Southampton games, he's always talking about Bella Kotchap. He's never heard of him before. But the more that he's seen him this season, that's the first name that he'll talk about and rave about. So just looking at some of the news and injuries now, it looks like he's going to be going into surgery. So we're probably going to be expecting that he's going to miss the game as it stands. I couldn't find the other two players that Jake was mentioning, but Bella Kotchap will be a pretty big miss for them as it stands. But we're going to take this as its own game. We do got to get used to this sort of European fixture schedule, because next season, if we do make top four, then we've got to use more players in the Champions League, so more of our key players, and then come back and play on a Saturday morning. So let's hope the legs are a little bit more managed better this time around, because the last week was a little bit tougher with where we went and then having to come back and go to Leeds. Then I guess we're going away. But there's a difference this time. We're home, but going away. So maybe it will be a bit better legs-wise, but I'm sure we'll be fine.
All right, gentlemen, changes that you foresee. I mean, Mikel's been very consistent about taking, his best 11, certainly the ones that, going back to Palace at the season opener, is as long as things are working, he doesn't like to tinker with it very much. But I think we've seen one change necessitated by injury, and that we have Tomiyasu starting at left back for the last two matches. This Tierney is working his way back to fitness. One guy that caught my eye, and I'm going to put this out for you. I mean, this is just my 2 cents, but I wonder if this is a match where Nketiah might get a start. I mean, Jesus has taken a lot of abuse out there, and he's just a guy in the Leeds match who just looked a little beaten up to my eye. But you can take any position you want, or is Arteta going to stay the course, Jacob?
I think for this one, he stays the course. I do expect against Forest at home for a bit more rotation. I think that's when we're likely to see Eddie kind of start. And to be honest, if Jesus starts, that might be forced. I believe Jesus and Saliba are both on 4 yellow cards right now. So another yellow card for either of them, and there's a suspension. In some ways, it might be good for us to get it out the way. So, without trying to be disrespectful to Nottingham Forest, playing them at home, if we're missing those two, I'd still feel quite comfortable. So I kind of expect us to go out full force for Southampton, and then we'll see who's available and what rotation might happen against Forest. But I think that's where I expect to see a few kind of rotations.
MJ?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think we'll probably go for the same team that we saw against Leeds. Preferably, I'd like to see Tierney start in left back. Just get that attacking side back in again. I would have thought Tomiyasu was more of a strategic player for more elite forwards. But I was surprised to see him start. But I guess if fitness was a thing, then probably explains a lot. But I'm the same. Probably see the same sort of side. If there were any surprises, Eddie and Nketiah probably, as you already mentioned. But I think we'll see the same side.
All right, I'm going to stay with you. Or actually, no, Jacob, since you're always complaining that he steals your score, I'm going to start with you. Prediction for the weekend at St. Mary's.
At St. Mary's, 2-0.
MJ?
Well, we're in a phase of threes, and now we're in a phase of ones. I think we're going to be in a few twos now, so I'll go 2-1. I think we'll concede again. Oh, no, actually, did we concede away? We haven't conceded away yet, have we?
No, we only concede at home.
Yeah, we did.
We conceded away at United, but other than that, we do very, very well.
Yeah.
Not conceding.
I'll say 2-1. 2-1 to us.
Okay. I'm gonna be the optimist this week. They were tired. I think there's a lot of recency bias. People say, "Oh, they only got one, then they got one. They're in a dip." I think they're going to bounce back. They're going to go back to what they were doing before. I'm going to say 3-0. So we'll see which one of us gets closest to the mark. All right. We've just passed the hour mark. So we want to thank all of you who joined us. We want to thank Kieran for that wonderful question. The rest of you who are watching us online or streaming, again, we want to thank you for joining us here at Daily Gooner Pod. Sorry we lost Sam. We'll get him back ASAP for his insight and his player assessments, which we really missed in this episode. And hopefully, at some point in the near future, we'll get Ryan back as well. But we're happy to talk Arsenal football with you. We're still top of the league, still going well, still staying healthy. Just stay the course, I said, so we'll wrap it up again. Follow us here. Obviously, you follow us here in your favorite streaming service or follow us live. Look for us online, our website at thedailygooner.com, and also on Twitter. You can see our handles here below, but also at Daily Gooner Pod on Twitter for our site, our updates, player assessments, opinions, whatever they pop up in real time. Again, thanks to all of you, for Jacob in London, for MJ in London, for Sam in London, just off screen. I'm Raphael in the States. We all bid you a good night, or where I am, a good afternoon.